Welcome back, everyone, to Personal Finance for Us. Today, going to be a little different today. I am going to talk about the best and worst financial decision I have ever made, starting with the worst. The worst is hands down. I bought a car. Good grief, man. It is perfect out today, so I expect a lot of traffic noise and stuff, so I hope it doesn't affect the video too bad. But I bought a car when I was still in college. It was not my idea. It was very much the idea of my father, who, I was all set on, I was going to get some old but still in good shape Acura Integra. I actually had my mind made up. I was online looking for some and found a couple. I was going to save up about $2,000, $2,500. It wasn't very far away, actually. And I told my dad what I was planning on doing, and he was like, "Oh, don't do that. I want you to be." He pretty much said what everybody says about cars, right? Which is, I want you to be something reliable. I don't want you to buy, some beater that's going to leave you on the side of the road and it's going to cost you all your money to put in. Putting all your money in on new parts and being at the shop all the time and blah blah blah. And he offered to co-sign the loan for me. There's a lot to extrapolate in this story already, I know, and that's what I decided to do. My mom thought it was a bad idea, but she didn't really say much. She just kind of sat back and watched the whole thing happen. I wish she would have interjected, but you'd have to know my father to understand that dynamic a little bit better. But yeah, so we ended up going out to Wayne, New Jersey, and I got a 2004 Mitsubishi Galant, and it was fantastic. And I worked my butt off on I had 3 campus jobs at one point, and I worked my butt off to make sure that those payments were made, and I started putting extras. I learned at a very early age that I actually don't like owing people money. I hate debt. So I went, and every chance I could, I went down. I would walk down sometimes. I would drive. I would drive down to the Chase Bank, 'cause that's where we took the loan out with, the closest one to campus, and I would make extra principal payments. As a result, though, my grades probably suffered a little bit because of it, because I was hyper-focused on working and making money more so than my studies. And after I graduated, my parents had moved down to North Carolina my sophomore year of college. I didn't have a job when I graduated, so I had no place to go. So down to North Carolina I came, and my first job was about 50 or 55 miles away from where my parents were living at the time. And I had maybe gotten 6 miles away from home, and the car breaks down. So much for that. So that put me in a pretty crappy position where I had to turn around, and I was upside down, I think about $4,000. So I went ahead and bought another car, and this was my first hard lesson in cars. One, there are no guarantees. Doesn't matter if you buy something newer or a beater, there are no guarantees in anything that's manufactured, let's be honest. And then 2, that's when I got introduced to how rolling over debt works. So I bought a car for $15,000. I bought a Pontiac G5, which is actually still kicking, still on the road. I actually sold it to my brother-in-law. So he's driving up and down in it in Florida. If you see a yellow Pontiac G5, it could be him. So I took an additional $4,000 and rolled it into that $15,000, because that's what you do when you're upside down in a car. So I traded that one in that left me on the side of the road, and I started all over again with about basically I think it was about $21,000 with tax, title, registration, all that jazz. So $21,000, 22 years old, making $12.50 an hour and living at my mama's house. So that was the worst financial decision I've ever made. It sucked. I did get that car paid off. I paid it off in, I think, 3.5 years out of a 5-year loan. Like I said, she's still on the road. I've done some good things with that car and because of that car, but it was a very painful financial lesson learned. The best financial decision I ever made, bar none, was to get married. Now I know that is probably, one, not what anybody would be expecting, and two, maybe like subjective, or I guess it depends on your experience, right? And no, I absolutely did not marry into any money. Absolutely not the case. My husband is first generation American. I actually taught him financial literacy. So it was nothing like that. As much as when you get married, your income effectively doubles for a lot of people. If you have two people making an average income, that means together you have twice the average household income. So just by getting married, my income kind of doubled. So that is why I say getting married is the best financial decision I ever made. I know it doesn't go that way for everybody, and I strongly encourage, before you get married, if you're not married or thinking about getting married, money is the number one reason for divorce in this country still. So it is imperative that you have similar goals. It is imperative that you're on the same wavelength. And once that happens, the amount of traction you can pick up as a team, doing it together, I mean, there's really no stopping you. So we also know that there is a lot of financial advice out there. Some of it good, some of it not so good. And some of that not so good advice comes from well-intentioned friends and family, and sometimes they just don't know any better. And sometimes you get some real good nuggets. The best financial advice I ever got was, my mom actually had a customer at her bank that she said this guy would come in, looking at him, you would never think he had a dime. She said every time she saw him, he had the same pair of really high, like really like when guys used to wear really high shorts in the 80s, 70s and 80s, like really high cut. I think she said they were jean cutoffs and they were holey and they looked terrible. Every time he'd come to the bank, he had those shorts on, and you look at him, you would never think that this guy was actually a millionaire. She said he had money in the bank. And they got into a really nice guy, she said. And they got into a conversation one day, and somehow I got brought up into the conversation. And he told her, he said, tell your daughter to read The Millionaire Next Door. That was apparently the book that made the light bulb go off for him and changed his life. Hey, dogs, stop. That was the book that really opened his eyes and changed his monetary habits. And she said, you never know, but he's got money in the bank. I said he's a millionaire. I don't know. Presumably, probably so. But yeah, apparently his bank account was rather large compared to the average person, and you would never know from looking at him. He didn't blow his money on, expensive shoes and clothes and watches and things like that. He obviously saved and invested his money. So actually not long after my mom told me that he said to tell your daughter to read The Millionaire Next Door, I read it. So that was probably the best financial advice I ever got. And it also speaks to, can you stop? Stop. It also speaks to the importance of financial education and financial literacy. how just reading a book can just make the light bulb go off for you. And it definitely did for me. I actually recommend that everybody read that book. It's a really good book, easy read. And truth be told, you actually don't even have to read it in its entirety. It does get a bit repetitive because the book's basically a big case study of people who are basically mindful and live below their means versus those who are actually high income earners and don't make much, or sorry, don't save much, and how those that are intentional and diligent with their money, even though they have less, they actually have higher net worths than those that are really high. Can you two stop it? Than those that are actually higher income earners and blowing a bunch of money. So a fantastic book. If you haven't read it, I think you should. Yeah, that's the best piece of advice I ever got. I've been sitting the last couple of minutes trying to think about the worst financial advice I ever got, and really it goes back to the car, which is the worst financial decision I ever made, or just the general, I guess just watching. My father is definitely a spender, kind of a flashier guy, likes to brag, so the car was probably at least the worst decision, and he influenced that. I can't think of a piece of advice like, hey, buy this stock, and, it ended up being a terrible idea, or, don't invest. But I think just that potential influence he could have had, or possibly would have had. I'm a natural just introvert and overthinker by nature, which I think also by nature means I'm less inclined to be a big spender. But it wasn't necessarily the best influence either, if that makes sense. Definitely a YOLO, I have my whole life to work type of mentality, and not a why work harder than you have to, save and invest and be smart with your money mentality. I think so. Yeah, I think it's more what I saw rather than any single piece of advice I could say was the worst financial advice I ever received. Hey everyone, so there was one thing that actually, when I was first thinking about what I would say for this video, that I actually did want to mention with my regrets, and that, there goes Bruce, and that was that I had wished, and it does kind of go back to coinciding with the car, had I had someone take me by the hand and say, hey look, maybe you need to get serious about the stock market thing. Amazon was really getting hot back when I was in college. So the year I bought my car was 2006. Amazon shares were between $26 and $60. Between 2003 and 2006, basically that's the time when I was in college. If I had just taken that car money and bought 10 shares of Amazon a month, where would I be now? So that's probably even bigger, and I guess it coincides with the car. But that's a pretty big regret. I think that'll do it for this video. What's the worst financial decision you guys made? Was it some bad advice? What's some really good advice? Is there any good advice that you received but you didn't listen to? This has been Personal Finance for Us. I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.